could have been worse. It was May 17th of 2015. About a month prior, my grandparents had just moved into Wadsworth Point nursing home. My grandmother's health was going downhill, and my grandfather had Alzheimer's disease. It was dreary outside. The blue skies were lost beneath the white and gray clouds. It was raining with soft winds, and my day at school was about to end. My mom texted my phone stating that she would be picking me up by the field house doors. I knew something was going on when I was hesitantly walking up to the car. My brother Nick and sister Becky were in the car with her. The looks on their faces were very alert and full of stress. The only time this happens is when something goes wrong in my family. When I got into the car, my mom puts her head down, slowly looks up at me with her weary eyes, and says, "Larry died." I just remember my mind racing and questioning my mom, asking her if it was my cousin Larry or my Uncle Larry. It was my uncle. I was so heartbroken because he rarely had health issues and his death was so sudden. As you can imagine, my family was already going through enough with my grandparents, and now my Aunt Anita suddenly lost her husband. I know my aunt was overwhelmed because we were in the midst of planning her mother's funeral. We made arrangements to plan my uncle's funeral at Glendale Cemetery, where we were meeting the family at 3 o'clock. We picked out a nice black headstone with his picture and name engraved on it. We also set up what day and time the funeral was going to be. After the session, my mom and I were heading back to her house. We were stopped at a red light in front of Save-A-Lot on East Talmadge Road in Akron. I was the only person in the car without a seatbelt on. I usually never wore my seatbelt in the back seat because I never thought anything bad happened to backseat passengers. I was drinking a can of Orange Crush Pop and looking out of the front windshield. My mom and I were conversing about the funeral, who's making dinner that day, and what we were doing afterward. All of a sudden, a black SUV rammed into the back of our car. My mom drives a small blue Chevy Aveo, which caused it to be more impactful on us. I heard nothing but shattering glass. My head and shoulders were thrown against my seat, after which my whole body had been thrown between the driver's seat and the passenger seat, feeling as if I was sandwiched between two concrete walls. It seemed like I was on a roller coaster that had a very bad malfunction. The can of pop crunched against my chest, leaving the orange liquid on the gray cloth on the inside roof. My ribs crushed against the armrest between the two front seats. I ached in excruciating pain. I tried grabbing onto the two front seats to stop myself from flying forward any more than what I already had. It was kind of like I was falling off of a diving board when I wasn't quite ready. My mom stuck her arm out trying to catch me. Everything went dark like a pitch black alleyway, and I began screaming and crying out, "Mommy, Mommy, Mommy." I opened my eyes and all of my hair was hanging over my face. I felt like I was just waking up from a night's rest. I could feel all of the blood rushing to one spot in my head. It felt as if tiny bugs were crawling underneath my scalp. I was kind of dizzy, very upset, and my breathing was very rapid. My mom was trying to calm me down and asking if we were all okay. My aunt was in the passenger seat, wide-mouthed and wide-eyed. She was terrified and shaking like a dog that just got a cold bath. Thankfully, the police seen the whole thing happen and asked us to pull aside into the parking lot on our left. We got out of the car to see the damages and to talk to the person who hit us. The lady was pale, heavy-set, blonde, and wore rectangular glasses. When she got out of her car, she was apologizing, saying that she was fidgeting with her radio and trying to pick up her credit card from the floor. It caused her to lose sight of the road and collide into our car. Her car had very little damages. The black paint was smeared and her front lights were shattered. The bumper was hanging off by half of an inch and the vents were smashed in. The back of my mom's car looked like a boulder had been pushing it for miles. The trunk was dented in and the tail lights were completely shattered. The license plate was nowhere to be found and the blue coat of paint had a touch of black smeared against it. I started to scream at the lady, telling her that she could have killed us and she could have waited to pick up her card when she got to her destination. I called her stupid for doing this to us. It was all out of anger and we ended up talking the situation out and I gave her a hug. She explained to my family that it wasn't in her intentions to hurt any of us and apologized again. We went our separate ways and I haven't seen her around since then. I hope and pray that she hasn't got into another accident with anyone else. I went to Barberton Hospital about 3 hours after the car accident. I wasn't in too much pain, but I was very scared to think I had broken any ribs. I was lying on the fresh white sheets of the hospital bed with the foam neck immobilizer around my neck. They surprisingly didn't take x-rays of me. A male doctor with short brown hair came in and explained to me that I would be just fine. He explained to me that the next day would hurt and feel worse. He said it would feel like I was in a boxing ring with a professional mixed martial arts fighter. He was right. The next day I had trouble getting out of bed. I couldn't move my neck, back, or shoulders. I felt as if there was 1,000 pounds sitting on my shoulders. This was the first car accident I have ever been in, and I would never want to be in one again. I ended up with whiplash and curvature in my cervical spine, and everything else looked okay. I had to go to therapy at Health Source in Norton multiple times a week for countless months. The doctor had to adjust my neck and back to get my spine to move back to its proper place. I had to lay an arched brick under my neck and help my neck get back to its normal position. I had to get my back massaged by a machine, which felt really nice. My mom and aunt were not hurt, although they were stunned and worried about me. I have always driven by several car accidents and said a small prayer for the ones involved. It could be as little as a car with a flat tire or as big as a car flipped over into a ditch. I felt like the day I got in the accident, someone said a small prayer for us because no one had to get rushed to the hospital, but most importantly, we were all still alive. For that reason, I knew God was with my family and I the whole time. Even though we were all okay, this car accident couldn't have happened at a more devastating time. From this accident, I learned that the smallest distractions can make the biggest impacts on someone else's life. The situation could have turned out way worse than what it did. I could have flown through the front windshield, and my mom and I could have died from impact if the airbags would have released. This exact reason is why people advertise their communities not to text and drive and to limit your distractions while driving. After this accident, I realized how serious this problem is and why no matter where you're sitting in the car, you should always wear your seatbelt. It could be the reason between you or someone else living or dying. If I would have had a seatbelt on, I probably would not have had very severe injuries to my neck. I would only have had minor whiplash and body soreness. I also thank God that my nephew was not in the car the day of the accident. My mom and I don't usually strap him securely in his car seat. If he was in the car, he would have flown to the front as well. My nephew at the time barely weighed 50 pounds, so he would have been more vulnerable to very severe injuries and possibly death. My mom and I discussed how we should, from that time on, securely strap him in case something like that happened again. As stated before, the lady that hit us came up with many excuses as to why she wasn't paying attention to the road. Ultimately, there is no excuse. She could have killed my family, and I with no intentions. She would have had to go to bed every night knowing she killed multiple people and caused my family a great deal of pain and suffering. For one person, that's a lot to take on. If you never want to be in this type of situation, sustain yourself from distractions during your trips in a car. I know most of us are young and we like to have our friends and family in our cars with our favorite music blaring with the windows down. Ask yourself, is having fun in the car, texting or scrambling for things on the floor in your glove compartment box while driving really worth taking someone's life? Could you go to bed every night wondering how much grief you caused their family? Could you stomach going to their funeral without feeling guilty? Would you be willing to go to prison for accidentally killing someone? I personally couldn't and wouldn't be able to handle the mental aspect of knowing I'm the cause of someone's injuries or death. That's why it's important to understand and pursue all driving precautions. I strongly encourage everyone to always wear your seatbelts and pay attention to all of your surroundings when driving. Nothing is worth putting someone or yourself in a life or death situation.